We studied a little bit together last time, an article by Jonathan Sarna, Dr. Jonathan Sarna, a famous Torah commentator, and we studied his piece, The Golden Age of America is, the Golden Age of American Judaism is, that's all that got left on the whiteboard.
Sephardic.
All right. So I also handed you out Dr. Mijal Bitan's piece on the future is Sephardic. I'm curious about your thoughts on it as we start looking toward lots of different thinkers right now, looking at American Judaism and looking at the future, looking at our situation and using their skills to analyze it and to give us language. For me, that's always super helpful whenever I'm feeling frustrated or something's going on and it's really tangled. It's very helpful for me to have language, and sometimes new language or reconstructed language, and a good diagnosis. All of those things help me stay focused in a conversation. When I get lost and it's like, cause I just feel that way, right? I get frustrated. So partly I teach this because it's what I need to be reading about and learn as we come into this really interesting time of American Jewish history. But hoping to give you, language and also a conversation, right? For us that we will be having for, God willing, many years about the time we're moving into as American Jews. So I want to look at this piece by Deborah. And again, this is from Hartman, the Shalom Hartman Institute in Jerusalem, where I studied for 4 years. I am a senior rabbinic fellow. So that my biases are made clear, I am part of that institution. This comes from Deborah, who's senior faculty at the North American branch of the Shalom Hartman Institute. Shalom Hartman Institute is a pluralistic think tank. So a Jewish pluralistic think tank started in Israel. And they have lots going on in Israel beyond just that center. They have school, high school, now a rabbinical program. They're just huge. So it's an amazing place. It's an amazing project. So this is their new journal. They put out a literary journal, and this is their latest one, America at 250. But of course, talking about Jewish America at 250. So looking at lots of different aspects of American Jewish civilization as we come to 250 years. All right. So all of you here have a copy. We're on the first page, first paragraph. Since its founding, America has lived in the tension between dreams and reality. The Declaration of Independence proclaimed, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal." Even as those truths were far from evident in the reality of the fledgling nation. The world of colonial America included genocidal campaigns against indigenous peoples, the enslavement of Africans and their American-born children, and the subordination of married women as the property of their husbands. Despite their proclamations of equality, the founders did not recognize any of these people as endowed with the, quote, inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Today, we understand the vision of the founders to be far more expansive. And yet, even today, the realization of that vision feels both tantalizingly possible and perpetually deferred. As a child of the 1980s, I grew up believing that America was getting ever closer to achieving its own ideals. Same for those of us who grew up in the 70s. For people who grew up in the 60s, I would venture to add people who grew up in the 50s and 40s felt this way too, right? It's like when I see child of the 80s, I'm like, oh my God. All right, but whatever. Liberalism was on the rise worldwide, and many of the adults around me believed it would triumph permanently. This trend helped create the conditions of the flourishing of American Jews like me, including the more complete integration of our Jewish and American identities. One of my favorite memories is attending protests with my mother during the war in Bosnia. In the early 1990s, a rabbinical student at the time and founding member of Rabbis for Human Rights of North America, she publicly drew on Jewish communal memories of the Holocaust to insist that it was the moral responsibility of the U.S. government to intervene in genocide. Watching my mother get arrested repeatedly on the nightly news defined my understanding of what it meant to be both a Jew and an American, a vision that entwined American exceptionalism and interventionism with a Jewish aspiration to repair the world. Despite being a member of a minority religion and the daughter of an immigrant, I felt that my Jewishness fit squarely within the American story and that my Jewish values were fully consonant with American ideals. To paraphrase Franklin Foer's description of this golden age for American Jewry that we talked about last week, I experienced my anxieties as American anxieties and my dreams as American dreams. How many of us grew up feeling this way? And it's not a pressure to say yes, but how many of us grew up feeling this way? A lot of us. Yeah? That my dreams were American dreams. And my Jewish identity called me to participate fully in America, which included in my mother wasn't arrested like this. My mother made other kinds of trouble. But we handed out leaflets on breast cancer in really poor parts of Atlanta where I grew up. My father had a motorhome because he was a traveling salesman and it was his traveling showroom. And we would take a projector and invite women into the motorhome to watch movies on breast self-exam, and lots of people did not like us down there doing this stuff. I can remember nasty comments, whatever, and I remember clearly being told that this was an obligation for us as Jews to be doing this as Americans. Right? All right. So a lot of us had this idea that liberalism was going to be dominant, and that just increased from after World War I, after World War II, right? That liberalism was taking off and was going to increase with the fall of the Soviet Union and the coming down of the wall in Berlin. Like there were so many ways it looked like liberalism was going to carry the day. And liberalism was going to help lift all boats. Okay. So that's where a lot of us, not just this author, it's where a lot of us are coming from. Today, those dreams feel more like fantasy. The supposed triumph of liberalism has been replaced by polarization, civic distrust, and rising illiberalism on both the left and the right. While overt anti-Semitism is on the rise, so is what Yael Silverstein calls ambient anti-Semitism, which is a social climate where mainstream cultural and institutional cues signal that Jewish identity is less legitimate, less protected, or less welcome. An increased number of American Jews describe themselves as feeling politically homeless. In an era marked by distrust of institutions, intensifying ideological sorting, and renewed debates about minority belonging in American public life, the question of what binds us together as citizens is newly urgent. As American Jews, our tradition offers unique resources to navigate this moment, not simply as Jews, but as Americans. The Jewish idea of covenant offers a powerful framework for reimagining American citizenship today. One that anchors political belonging not in agreement, but in mutual obligation. A covenantal model acknowledges that we must accept the mantle of citizenship without knowing fully what it will ask of us, but it also grounds us in the relationships to our founding principles and to one another that will make it possible for us to fulfill our obligations. Thinking of citizenship as a covenant between citizens can help to generate a sustained commitment to the American project despite its burdens and disappointments. All right. She's going to be in conversation with a different article that I don't really want to get into. So I'm just going to stay with this author's discussion and argument and what she's dealing with. Go to the bottom paragraph on page 2 for those of you with the hard copy. I've got it on screen. She is quoting Alan, someone who wrote a different article. She says, I draw here on the Jewish canon to articulate a set of practices essential for American citizenship, regardless of each citizen's religious identity or commitments. Building on the biblical description of the covenant at Mount Sinai, I call this a covenantal citizenship. Okay? Top of page 3. It doesn't matter. Go to the 3rd page. Just count them. 1, 2, 3. Yes, 1.
Oh,
Backside counts. Correct. So you should be on a page that says through the revelation of the Torah. Yes? All right. So this is a new way of talking about citizenship. She's gonna argue one Jewish concept that helps us think about citizenship in a time of extreme disappointment and civic frustration and polarization is covenantal citizenship. Okay. So let's see. What's that? Through the revelation of the Torah, the constitutional document of Jewish life, the Sinai covenant implicates the Israelite nation both horizontally and vertically. Horizontally and vertically. It binds us as Jews to other people, clarifying that we have ethical obligations to all of humanity, but also particular bonds of kinship with other Jews. Those bonds are shaped by a shared history and also a shared sense of mission. Skip a paragraph. Like membership in the Jewish people, democratic citizenship also implicates us both horizontally, binding us to our fellow Americans, and vertically. However, this vertical relationship is different from the Sinai covenant in important ways. An American vision of covenantal citizenship is not and cannot be grounded in a relationship with God. Instead, our bonds as Americans are defined by our shared reference to the vision and principles outlined in the Constitution. What do y'all think about that? I'm not sure I agree. I can't decide. So horizontally, obviously, it works the same way as the covenant at Sinai. We all agree we're going to be in this together. We're going to figure it out when we disagree. We're going to have an agreed upon method to do that, right? That horizontally, same between the covenant at Sinai and this deal of being American citizens. She's arguing it can't be the same in terms of the vertical relationship because we are not a theocracy and God is not at the top. That is not what binds us, right? Rather, she says, what's the vertical relationship is all Americans and their shared reference to the vision and principles outlined in the Constitution. We all can agree probably with that statement, yes? I want to go on. Go ahead.
I just want to say, isn't that because of the separation of church and state? I mean, the United States.
No. I think she's making an argument that as citizens of this state, I mean, not to say no. What I'm saying is she's saying it's different. Sinai is definitely a covenant with the divine. Mm-hmm. And then horizontally, it's between the people Israel. Mm-hmm. And that citizenship in America is the same horizontally. It's between all Americans. But vertically, it's not God. It's the vision and principles outlined in the Constitution. Mm-hmm. What's my problem? What's my sticky place? What's bothering Rashi? I'm not so sure that I wouldn't say what binds Americans together vertically are those things that I associate with the divine. Justice, equity, compassion, forgiveness, patience, trust, sacrifice. Like, I don't know. Like, I'm not sure that I wouldn't use God language to say, I don't know, that I feel bound. I'll just speak for myself. That I feel bound by a covenantal relationship with America, not just because of the Constitution. It's bigger than that for me. Lori and then Shelley.
Yeah, well, I mean, we keep hearing about the Judeo-Christian ethic as a value of the United States, and that's, I agree with Eileen. It's like we got to keep separation of church and state, but I also agree with you that it seems like there's this Judeo-Christian ethic that has a gloss over the United States.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Shelley.
I think she maybe is making the comparison of God, the laws that we live by. So I'm wondering if she's trying to make the comparison of God, the giver of the laws and the ethics, and our Constitution comprising the ethics and the outline of what our life is in the United States, what we try to hold up as the ideal. Trouble with
She's definitely doing that. All I'm saying is I underlined, is this true for me? That I cannot use a vertical model of covenant as a citizen of America, that what's vertical cannot involve God. And I am not sure that I feel that way. I don't know. I'm not saying we have to agree as Americans that it's God. We don't have to agree on what that is. But we don't even agree about the Constitution and what it should, and what is, abortion covered or not? Is it constitutional or not? What is free speech? Was what happened on college campuses free speech or not? Like, we don't agree about the Constitution. What we agree about is that the vertical relationship of all Americans to something that holds us together is the Constitution, right? But for me, there's something above that too that makes me change the Constitution. Does that make sense? As we evolve our understanding of things, and I believe that is part of divinity unfolding as we become more enlightened, more aware, more exposed, more whatever, that is, for me, those divine principles of just that Reconstructionists hold. We don't believe in a divine being. I'm not talking about a divine being. I'm talking about the way we hold this universe to be constructed of some things like justice, equity, freedom, compassion, forgiveness, transformation, the powers that make for all of that. For me, that's what I think of when I think of living as a citizen here and how I want to vote. It's not just the Constitution. We got to push the Constitution, right? But from where? From what? From a relationship to what do we bring pressure to bear on the Constitution or on constitutional law? And for me personally, I absolutely understand that as being rooted in my understanding of the God forces all around us that I just named, and there's more of them. Barbara.
Hi. Yeah. I think you're saying what the author alluded to earlier in the piece, that even though the founders didn't consider women and Black people and as, citizens, and Black people weren't even people, they were 3/5 of a person, and they didn't have the rights, I think that the founders thought that inherent in the Constitution were these values that you're speaking of. And I would also argue that part of Americanism, exceptionalism, used to be tikkun olam, and it's not anymore. It's, after World War II, we did want to fix the whole world, and now we don't. And so maybe part of the Jewish responsibility is to remind people of these values. I agree with what you're saying. I think it's in the Constitution, just may not be that explicit.
Okay. Good.
I agree with you. I mean, I think there are two covenants, and for me, the way that I hold myself accountable in the first is very different than the second.
So you're articulating two covenants, and the way you hold yourself accountable to the first one is very different from how you do the second. Explain.
So from the divine standpoint, I have a much higher threshold of the way that I hold myself accountable within that.
So in your understanding of the covenant with divinity, you hold yourself to a higher standard?
Yeah, absolutely.
Than your American covenant to the Constitution.
I think that if I had such I think if they were equal standards, I would find myself so frequently fractured because, to your point, the values are not interpreted the same way. And from the horizontal standpoint, it's operated by a very different set of rules horizontally. So I think I would find myself consistently feeling fractured.
So if you felt the same pull to the second covenant, the one to the Constitution, if you felt that pull, you would feel internally, constantly in pieces or pulled in different directions because the what do you call this way? Horizontal relationships are so fraught right now, and it's that Constitution is being interpreted so differently. Is that what I hear you saying?
Yeah, I don't feel that conflict or the same way.
So that's because that was where I was going. So you say you don't feel that conflict within these walls, but what about when you're standing in another Jewish space where it would be interpreted very differently?
Oh, I mean, I see what you mean. So I think that if we're talking about the American construct within really any set of walls, it's probably hard to pick up and assume that the values are exactly the same within that context. So I just, to your point, I agree with you that they're, I don't know, individually I try to kind of merge the American values with Jewish values, but I found that it's hard to kind of have both within one set.
So the merging of American values and Jewish values is a challenge always right now?
Well, I think one is parental to the other. I think one is trumps the other. There's a lot of commonalities, I think, between American values and Jewish values, but I just think the divine relationship would be very hard to apply universally, within,
Okay. So and that's one thing for us to be thinking about also is what happens when Jewish values and American values clash, right? That's absolutely something to be holding on.
I throw this out to you, do we consider ourselves Jews first, Americans second, or Americans first and Jews second?
So I find that question problematic, and I find that question completely irrelevant. Because I'm a true Reconstructionist. I walk in two civilizations equally, and they inform each other in really helpful and really crazy ways. And sometimes I get nuts, on one side or the other of that. But I'm both all the time. So for me, that's like saying, am I more blue-eyed or brunette? You know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense to pull one out from the other for me. Okay, Mike.
You're muted. Okay.
I agree with your last statement. I'm having trouble with understanding the question. My view of the world is, here I am, and God created us, or the powers of that brought chaos from, that eliminated the chaos, gave us certain principles, that are consistent with our Reconstructionist views. Be kind to our fellow people, leave the world a better place, don't shoot guns at people and so on. And whether it's horizontal or vertical, I'm sitting here thinking those are the principles that I carry with me. I don't know that all of them are in the Constitution. There's nothing in the horizontal that says you can't drive 40 in a 25 zone. Mankind, womankind, peoplekind has created all these laws that govern the outside world, but I think I look at them with the same formulas that I look at my fellow Jews and being a good human being. And I mean, my mother taught me that, I guess, and I try to be a good human being in whatever situation I am, whether I'm looking at our Jewish population or the crazy world that is out there. So I'm thinking it's the same thing is what I'm saying, I guess.
Okay. Let's go back to our author. Go to the bottom of your page 3. At a time when trust in our fellow citizens and in the mutual benefit of the American project is eroding, however, a model that does not rely exclusively on reciprocity or articulate our obligations as citizens is sorely needed. A covenantal approach. Drop down to the next paragraph. A covenantal approach offers 3 core responses to the pressures in contemporary America, an American society that drive polarization, radicalization, distrust, and a withdrawal from civic life. First, it can help us articulate a new patriotism, one in which serious disappointment does not lead to rupture. Second, by offering new paradigms of how love operates, it situates the patriotism within a set of practices rather than treating it as an emotional orientation. These practices can help us accept the burdens of citizenship, even when we do not know what our country may yet ask of us. Finally, a covenantal model offers new pathways to read ourselves into the story of America and to see ourselves as authors of its next chapter, even as we continue to grapple with competing visions of what America is, can, or should be. Okay. So now let's look at, what is this love business? Love and disappointment. Like many Americans, I grew up believing that America was the greatest country in the world. But even as a child, my patriotism was not rooted in a simple naivete. Growing up in Massachusetts, both the glory of the American Revolution and the darker sides of our colonial legacy felt encoded in my surroundings. Lexington and Concord, the clip-clop of their names echoing with Paul Revere's Midnight Ride, Salem still smoking from the witch trials, my own hometown of Amherst, whose namesake notoriously advocated for the use of smallpox blankets to massacre the indigenous population. For me, patriotism has always depended on an ability to love through disappointment. This is the first contribution of a covenantal model. It can reshape how we understand what it means to love our country, especially in moments of disappointment or disillusionment. It can clarify what this love asks of us. And then she goes on to describe the fact that in our covenantal story, God, right, God's love for Israel and the covenant remaining in place were not easy. Throughout Jewish history, God's relationship with Israel is characterized by both love and disappointment. The idea of Israel as an Am Segula, a treasured nation, is a foundational theme through the Tanakh, but God's perennial discontent with Israel's shortcomings is equally present. Israel emerges quickly as a stiff-necked people, alternately whining and rebelling over the course of the exodus from Egypt and their desert journey to the promised land. These challenges within the divine-human relationship are not rectified by the giving of the Torah, the conquest of the land, the building of the temple, or the founding of the monarchy. Through the revelation of the Torah, the constitutional document of Jewish life, the Sinai covenant implicates the Israelite nation both horizontally and, I'm going back a page. Sorry about that. Or the founding of the monarchy. Page 5. Instead, the theme of failure and disappointment intensifies throughout the prophetic books and later writings. The prophets repeatedly castigate Israel for its short-sightedness and its disregard for divine teaching. Israel's kings stray after foreign gods. From the divine perspective, to enter the covenant is to commit oneself to be in relationship with people who are a continual disappointment. And this is a story we tell about ourselves, y'all. Right? This is a story we tell about ourselves, God being in relationship to us, that we are constantly a disappointment. The profound surprise of this story is that it does not end in abandonment. As humans, it's natural to feel despair in the wake of repeated failures, when others let us down, whether those others are friends, family, or even our country. It is tempting to simply walk away. Strikingly, the rabbis imagine that God also feels this temptation. The Babylonian Talmud describes God as wrestling with the urge to give up and destroy the world on a daily basis. And yet each day, God finds a way to consciously reorient and reinvest. Listen to this gorgeous midrash, y'all. Listen to this. This might come up at High Holidays. Avodah Zarah 3b. This is God every day. Every day. This is how the Talmud imagines God. Ready? There are 12 hours in the day. During the first 3, the Holy One, blessed be God, sits and engages in Torah study. During the second 3 hours, God sits and judges the entire world. Once God sees that the world has rendered itself liable to destruction, God arises from the seat of judgment and sits on the throne of mercy, and thus refrains from destroying the world. Okay. How much do you love that? How much do you love that midrash? In the High Holiday Liturgy, we say over and over and over again that we are trying to move God from Kisei Hadin, the throne of judgment, to Kisei HaRachamim, to the throne of mercy. This is the root of one of those uses of the pairs of the thrones, that every day God gets up, and what's the first thing God is going to do? Daven. That's number one. God davens, right? So God opens God's talit, God wraps God's self and davens, and then is going to do a Bissell Torah study. All right. So God forbid we shouldn't study every day. So God is going to, of course, study Torah after davening. So God is studying Torah. And after studying Torah, now it's time for God to go take a look at what's going on with the world. And God sits in judgment of the world for 3 hours. It's a quarter of the day. What happens every single day in the divine courtroom? The world is convicted, people. The world is convicted and deserving of destruction every single day. Then what does God do? God gets up from the throne of justice and moves over to sit in the throne of mercy. Why? If God is a God of justice, why not stay on the justice throne and destroy the world? What kind of justice God is that? Pam?
I mean, he'd be destroying his creation all the time. I mean, we're not gods. We're just human beings. We're imperfect. I think we're here to learn and grow. So, yeah, God has to have some compassion and mercy for us, or he'd destroy his creation all the time. So,
all right. So why not just destroy creation all the time?
I guess he wants us here. I don't know.
I think this is the point of covenant. I think this is the whole idea of covenant. God entered a covenant, which means it's binding on God too. So what does it take for God to fulfill God's own covenant? It takes figuring out how to move from what we deserve to compassion. That is the move to love. Actions coming out of love is compassion. Not because we deserve to be here, but because of compassion and love that God has for us. Again, I don't think God is a being, but right, imagine the divine shefa, the divine overflow, that's how we stay going. That is how an infant survives, especially colicky ones. It's how they survive, is compassion. Our compassion, our love, our commitment to doing whatever's necessary, whether we like it or not. What I feel like I'm struggling with right now is my love for this country. I'm struggling. I'm really struggling. And I love this country, don't get me wrong. But I'm really struggling for it to be at the forefront right now. There's a part of me whose touch is stuck in Kehillat Din, in the judgment chair. And when I look at what's going on, it's very hard. It's very hard for me to pick myself up and put myself over in Kisei HaRachamim. But for me, what's nice about this article, what I like about this language, what I like about this article is that, okay, Aim, like, if you can do that with other Jews who are making me crazy too, if I use a covenantal framework, it's no different. I have to figure out a way to sit in Kisei HaRachamim as well and figure out how to contribute to how we make it better, right? How we help who we can, how we, right now it's like, okay, just stay in the Palisades, focus on the Palisades, focus on KI, focus on my people, focus on getting us here, focus on getting through focus on what I can do with my attention and my energy and my hope and my rachamim. Okay. Anyone else? Thanks, Sheldon.
Well, I share the light with you. I mean, I brought this up of how do you tolerate the intolerable? That I'm talking for me, that's a constant struggle, or, to be compassionate of those that don't have compassion.
Yeah. It's tough. It's tough. What I love also is that the author points out that notice what is the first thing God does is study Torah, right? For me, that's critical. Where are we engaging with wise, thoughtful, smart, deep, visionary, compassionate leaders, writers, thinkers to help us even decide what to be about in terms of Din or Rachamim today? Where do we even start? And where's another vision or understanding of what's possible that I can then work towards? Because it ain't going to come from me when I'm down and cynical and feeling crazy, right? It's just not. But that's okay. Even God studies Torah. Think about that. What an amazing chutzpahdik Jewish idea. God has to go study Torah before judging the world. God has to go learn. God has to study before God judges the world. What if we felt a little more of that humility? That before we make such a decision, we go and learn a little. Before we get up and make all of our proclamations of the day about what's good, what's bad, what's going on, who I hate, who's wrong, and why, right? What if we had to study a little Torah? first. And what would that be? What would that look like? I know what that is as a Jew, but what would that look like for me? What if I took that seriously as an American? What would I be reading? I think it's a question worth asking ourselves. What is the American Torah we're studying? Because all of us here study Torah every week together. So what's the Torah as Americans that we should be looking at?
Time to read the Constitution. Time to read the Constitution.
Well, yeah, but do I stop with Deuteronomy? No, I look at commentary on Deuteronomy. I look at inspiring writers who are digging deep into what that means for us today, right? And I feel like we don't, and so where do we do that? Outside of a polarized environment, I'm not sure we do that. You know what I mean?
Amy, so I think part of the response or lack of response to your question is there is too much out there with the internet, with a gazillion streaming channels, a gazillion newspaper. There's too much out there to know what we should be reading and focus
Yeah.
and what sources should we be using to educate ourselves.
Yeah.
And I, some of us who are lawyers and did take constitutional law, we're asking our con law professors or friends who are teaching con law, how do you even teach constitutional law these days? How do you do it? Because
Right.
it's changing all the time and there's no such thing as precedent anymore. So I think part of it is it's like a moving target.
Yeah. And I think that's part of the problem is that, well, I mean, I know that's an understatement. That is the problem. I mean, you just identified the problem that we are so fragmented in even having access to what we think are inspirational American, teaching texts. It's nutty. Let's look at page 8. Sorry. That the one that starts thus far the rabbinic approach. The page that starts thus far the rabbinic approach. You see it? Okay. Paragraph below that. When the Torah is revealed, the assembled Israelites famously proclaim Na'aseh v'nishma. Literally, we will do and we will listen. Some interpreters understand these to be essentially parallel statements. We will do what the Torah asks of us, and we will listen to, meaning obey, its commandments. However, many commentators understand these statements to be sequential. The assembled Israelites agree to do what the Torah asks, even before they have heard what it demands. Their consent is not informed. They do not know what will be asked of them. This lack of comprehension runs deeper than either account acknowledges. Even if every person standing at Sinai knew the contents of the Torah in its entirety, even if they had read and studied every commandment in detail, they still could not fully understand what they were committing themselves to. Just as a parent cannot fully anticipate what their child will demand of them over the course of their lives, so too the Jewish people cannot know in advance what the Torah will ask of them over the course of history. The Israelites who accepted the Torah at Mount Sinai could not possibly envision what it would mean to keep Shabbat in an age of cars and electricity, nor could they imagine applying the Torah's moral teachings about care for the vulnerable or the foreigner to contemporary immigration policies. Each new situation that presents itself redefines our understanding of the obligations that Torah places upon us. The way these obligations develop over time stands in tension with liberal notions of consent. Even freely chosen commitments unfold in ways that cannot be fully known or controlled. And these tensions are not limited to the Jewish relationship to Torah. They are inherent in the way Americans relate to our founding documents as well. When the founding fathers first declared that all men are created equal, they created a moral vision for society that transcended their historical moment. This goes to what we were just talking about, right? That these documents, as we evolved, then we understood that had to change, right? The obligations that these texts place upon us are not static, but continue to be revealed in history. A robust vision for American citizenship must be able to contend with this challenge directly. Covenantal citizenship allows us to center the primacy of consent, but also the primary of the relationships to which we commit ourselves as citizens. We cannot know in advance what our country or fellow citizens will ask of us, but as patriots, we commit ourselves to them nonetheless. This is where it gets tricky and really messy. Really tricky and really messy. If we really want to talk about covenantal citizenship, bless you, this is where it gets messy. So why is it easier for me to be a loving, covenantal, loyal Jew, knowing who's in that group that I cannot abide, and so much harder for me right now to do that on the American side? Is it because I self-select what Jews I'm around?
The latter requires a lot.
The latter, being an American in covenantal relationship with other Americans, requires a lot more compassion than it does for me to deal with other Jews. Interesting. I just had a friend come back from Israel. She was at Women at the Wall, and, Orthodox women were throwing dirty diapers on them and screaming, heretic, heretic, heretic. Is it because I'm just not around that? Is it because I live a professional Jewish identity? I don't know. But I know that there are Jews who make me as nuts as some Americans make me, but I'm really struggling with the covenantal relationship piece with Americans who just defy what I think are the fundamental principles expressed in the founding of this country. I'm just really aware that I'm struggling. Right. Yes.
One reason for that, even with Jews who you disagree with, at a fundamental level, you share the Jewish values of justice and equality and compassion. And I think the reason you're struggling with Americans is because we're being told by some other Americans that those principles are un-American. You've heard empathy is for weaklings, and, America first, and we don't have to care about anybody else. So you're struggling it with Americans because you're being told those values are un-American, I think.
That is very interesting, Barbara, that even though the people at the Women of the Wall want to throw dirty diapers on me as a Jewish feminist, they think they are being what? Just?
I don't know what they're thinking, and I'm certainly not condoning their behavior.
No, I know. I'm just trying to tease out the difference, because I think that you're onto something. That it isn't just that we disagree how to apply justice or, I don't know, give me some more American values. Freedom. What I heard you say is that when I say certain things are American, there are folks in America telling me, no, those are not foundational American values. Now we have a real problem.
That's
beyond how we apply them. Applying them is policy. If we don't share the idea that there's a level below which no one should fall, how much we spend on that or how little, or to whom it applies or to not, okay, that we can argue about. But what I hear you saying is there's a push now that's being said out loud that is not a fundamental American value. Is that what you're saying?
You've articulated it very nicely. I think that's what I'm saying. Thank you.
Isn't that really on both sides? I mean, I listen to, I watch the news too much, and I hear these people saying these horrible people in our government, people in, other people that is, I find totally evil. And to me, I made that judgment that they're the ones that are wrong, that what I believe is quote right way to believe, and that these people are. So I mean, they may see me as evil, but I see them as evil. As if you want to go to extremes.
Yes. So Gloria is pointing out that right now the experience is that each of us on different sides of stuff see the other one as not only wrong, but as my enemy on some level. Like existentially, this has been said a lot recently, that as my existential enemy. Yes, I believe that's true. I think what Barbara was saying that I need to give more thought to is, I think I've always understood those people as agreeing with the fundamental founding principles of America. How they apply them makes them radically different from me, and I think they're wrong. It's another thing to say, we now disagree on the fundamental principles of the founding values of this country. That feels new on some level to me. Does that make sense? Like, I grew up in a time where I was, coming out of the civil rights movement, growing up in the South, racism, I think everyone agrees racism is wrong unless you're a fundy white nationalist. It used to be, okay, but that doesn't mean they should have greater entry into college. That doesn't mean, right? There are all these things that follow from that liberals thought that other people didn't, and there was fighting about it. That's okay, right? I don't like it, but okay. But what about when we get to a point where half of America says, actually, Black people are not entitled to the same rights as white people? That's a fundamental schism that what do you do with? Which I hear Barbara saying is kind of where some of us feel like we're at. Okay. Which I don't think I would have articulated like that before. Yes, Mike?
Well, yeah, I know it's being recorded, and I've probably put this on Facebook 1,000 times, so it is what it is. We have had bad presidents, over the centuries. We have had poor government over the centuries. But I truly believe that we are in horrible shape as a country because the people leading us and the man leading the people leading us are in the game for their own good, could care less about anybody and everybody in the country and around the globe. I mean, it is a horrible time. I do post on Facebook and read that of others. We have a fascist government. We have an individual convicted of 35 crimes who has committed atrocities, not of the scale that we talk about, but in terms of relations with people. I mean, it is a terrible state of affairs. But the good thing is that as I read the polls and hear what's going on, many people who were independent have now realized that we're not following the principles that they cherish, and approaching half of the people who were foolish enough to vote for this individual a second time now share our concern about our basic values. It makes me sad that 4 members of the Supreme Court have completely disregarded our history, completely disregarded the Constitution. How do you apply the Constitution as it was understood in 1776 to the world we live in? You can't. You need to find the policies, find the terms of the covenant, and then they change because the world is so different. And our government is not doing that.
So what I hear you saying is that it seems like this has pushed us to a place of maybe redefining what those values are that we would place above, the Constitution. Like what the hope are within, of course, but what are those that are, bigger that we need to figure out how to articulate and get back as the priorities rather than the places that we are.
And maybe what we're going through is, unfortunately, what we've been going through will cause people to wake up.
Yeah.
Wake up.
Yep.
And
It's right. That's possible. All right. We're going to close the last two paragraphs. This vision of citizenship does not resolve the tension between America's ideals and its realities. It does not make it easier to achieve our dreams for America or to resolve the differences between our many competing visions of what those dreams should be. Instead, it asks us to inhabit those tensions differently, to treat them not as reason to withdraw or to destroy, but as a call to sustained collective responsibility. To accept the yoke of citizenship, meaning this is the language of accepting the yoke of the covenant, is to bind ourselves to one another across disagreement, disappointment, and time, not only as critics of America's failures or beneficiaries of its promises, but as caretakers of an unfinished project. The American dream may never be fully realized, but covenantal citizenship demands that we remain committed to one another in the work of trying. So I think for me, what she's asking of us as Jews, as Americans, is to use a little of the covenantal framework and language and idiom for the days that we're like, I can't do this. Right? The days it's like, we all disagree too much. This is not sustainable. This is not a project that's doable. This has moved so far away from what the fact. So looking at a covenantal framework says we're in this. And it's much better that we stay in it than that this thing fails and tanks. So as we look to the next articles, we'll be talking in other ways about this relationship to America at 250. Lori Hazenkamp, would you like to close it out?
Well, I just wanted to say what part of what we're talking about is buying into the system. Like we buy into the system. We whether it's the judicial system in America or the voting system, and we live with the results of the system working its way through. And my struggle is that there are so many people in power right now who don't think the system applies to them. And so here we are saying, well, we're buying into the system. We want to do it the right way. But there's other people who ignore that. So it's almost feel like they're breaking the covenant that we're trying to be part of.
Yeah.
Right. And so we have to strengthen, the relationships that we have and hope, that like what Mike said is true, that a lot of those independents are starting to swing, seeing that without a system, a functional system, things can get really scary. But it took this long of people dodging the system or rigging the system, I think, for some folks to wake up. That's my hope. All right, people. Until next time, God bless America.